Welcome to Purpose and Poise with Kelley Taylor. This isn't just a podcast, it's a conversation. A space for bold stories, unfiltered truths, and lessons that remind us of who we are and who we're becoming. And remember, living with purpose isn't always pretty, but it's always powerful. Let's lean in. Thank you for tuning in to Purpose and Poise. I'm your host, Kelley Taylor, and welcome to our very first episode. I'll be honest, I sat on this idea of starting a podcast for over a year. The world isn't exactly short on podcasts, right? So I questioned whether we really needed another one and whether people would be willing to go there to share the unfiltered, untold, and deeply human parts of their stories. But after much delay and a lot of reflection, I'm so glad we landed here today together. Because this is more than a podcast. It's a conversation, a space for real talk, real stories, and real purpose, told with grace, poise, and authenticity. And our guest, Darae, she is an author and breast cancer survivor. She and I went to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff together. So I've known her many, many years. Tina is a woman that I deeply admire and respect and just want to tell her story. And I know that it's going to be a blessing to someone else. So if you're ready, let's get to it. Let's lean in. Hi, Tina. How are you?
Hi, Kelley. Thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be your very first guest.
I know. Can you believe we're doing this? I know we talked about this over a year ago.
We did. And even at that time, I told you specifically that it's going to be unfiltered, raw, and I'm going to just tell it like it is. So here we go.
Well, let's lean in. How are you today?
I'm good. A little nervous, but I'm going to work through it.
That makes two of us, but we'll get through it. Tell me, I remember when you first told me that you had breast cancer. It was actually somewhere around October because I was texting you asking if you were going to homecoming. And I remember being so disappointed that you were like, no, I'm not going this year. And you didn't offer any more explanation. And I left it alone out of respect for our friendship. And then after homecoming, we talked and you said, I didn't go to home. You text me. You said, I didn't go to homecoming because I have breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. This is not something, ma'am, this is not something you text. And then I called you. And so I just truly believed after learning more of your story and talking to you that I don't believe we go through things just to go through things. I believe that your story is a blessing to someone else. And so I wanted to thank you, first of all, for being willing to share just unfiltered mm-hmm. and to really get into it. So I want to start by asking you, how did you discover the lump?
Well, unfortunately, my mammogram did not detect the mass. I'm a big advocate of mammograms and self-care and going to the doctor. So I was actually 1 month, 17 days shy of my next mammogram. And I can remember very well, it was on October 17th, 2023. I just finished working out and I was getting ready to take my shower and get dressed for a conference call. And I'd never taken off my sports bra this way in my life. And I can remember going under mm-hmm. and up. And I touched my breast and I was like, nah, surely not. And for about 2 minutes, I was like, you don't want to know. Nah, you don't want to know. You're fine. You're healthy. You're in great shape. You work out every day. You eat right. Mm-hmm. Nothing's wrong. So about 2 minutes later, I cursed myself out and called myself a plethora of names. Not so kind. And it was like, yes, you do want to know. So I immediately got on the phone and started making calls. And by October, the next day, I was in my primary care doctor's office. I called the mammography center and said, hey, I need an appointment. They said, we don't have any. I said, find me any location in the Metroplex, in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and get me an appointment. So by that evening at 2:00, I was on the table getting a diagnostic mammogram and getting the ultrasound. And then a week later, I was on the table for a biopsy.
Wow. And so when the doctor came back and confirmed your fear, what was that initial emotion? What was it that you were feeling or thinking in that moment?
So actually, the radiologist, I begged her for her diagnosis. I said, "What do you see?" She said, "I can't say." I said, "Please tell me. Please tell me." And she said, "Well, it's cancer." So on the way home, I remember having like a little prayer vigil in the parking lot with my friends, my sister and one of my close friends, Tara. And we cried and we were like, "It's going to be okay." And I go in and I'm on my knees praying in the lobby. I'm just praying. I'm calling on God, to like carry me because I couldn't carry myself. So when she gave me that diagnosis, when she gave me her, her opinion, I had a breakdown. I barely could drive home. I didn't know if I needed to take an Uber home. I mean, it was like, why me? Why me? And it was devastating. Like I remember every single detail about that day, and I was rocked to the core.
What was your initial fear?
Dying.
Dying. So it wasn't, how am I going to tell my family? How am I going to take care of myself? Not the treatment. It was dying. Why do you think that your initial response was, am I going to die? Or why do you think that was the initial response? If you have a reason for that.
I do. So I went nuclear. My response was a nuclear response. It was the worst response ever. Primarily because I watched my mom pass away from colon cancer. And I remember being in college. She was diagnosed when I had just turned 20. And I was shook. I watched her expire, and I knew the horrors of chemotherapy. And I'm not taking into account that, even though I'm in IT, I wasn't taking into account that technology had advanced. And all I could envision was, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And that's what I kept reliving that and thinking about what it was going to look like. And I didn't know what to expect.
Right. When you started to get to, well, I want to back up a bit. Who were you before cancer? Who was Tina before cancer?
Oh, Tina was this social butterfly that was at all events. She was going to be dressed to the nines. She was going to be
asking you about homecoming, but go ahead.
She was going to have the best, the flyest handbag, the dopest shoes. She was going to always be on point, and she was going to be in the know about every single event. That's just one of my personality. I'm very lively. I talk to anybody, and that hasn't changed.
Right. No, that's really good. And I want our listeners to keep in mind who you said Tina was before cancer, because that's going to be important on the back end. So I want to talk about the treatment. What was your treatment plan? And I want you to tell them the numbers of your treatment plan. And then I want to talk about you having to advocate for yourself.
Okay. So, I want to start by saying that when I first was diagnosed, I wanted to go to MD Anderson. MD Anderson is the number one cancer center in the world. And that was like at the forefront of my mind. I was like, I want to live and I want to fight this. So I called MD Anderson, and I even called MD Anderson, and I called University of Texas at Southwestern, which is in Dallas, before I even got my official diagnosis. I was up I didn't sleep between the time I had my biopsy and the time I had my diagnosis. That was about 7 days. Sleep was not to be found. So I was up in the middle of the night, and I said, I'm going to make appointments. If I don't have cancer, I'll cancel. If the radiologist was wrong, I'll cancel them. So I can remember very well, October 31st, 2023 was when I went to see my surgical oncologist. And before I went, I looked at her bio, and I couldn't go to MD Anderson because my insurance was not accepted there. But what God did is he allowed MD Anderson to come to me. So my surgical oncologist was actually was a resident there. My oncologist actually went there. And a host of my other doctors actually went there as well. So I always say God carries you when you can't carry yourself.
Absolutely.
And that was the turning point for me, that, you kind of start feeling a little bit more comfortable that you're going to be okay. So the treatment plan was, a little bit different than most. It was something new. I had chemotherapy prior to my actually having surgery. So the chemotherapy is to make sure it stops spreading. They can catch it all. I went through the 6 cycles of chemo, and I actually asked for more chemo. That's how I was like, I want all of this out of me. Like when you know something is growing and you foreign, and it can kill you, you want it gone. And I can remember very well that after my first chemotherapy treatment, and I prayed to God, I said, God, make this work. Allow this to work for me. And I remember looking for my mass after the very first chemo session. I couldn't feel it anymore. And I was like, is this real? Like it's gone? And I went to the doctor. She said, no, I don't feel it either. She said, if you do feel something, it's probably going to be scar tissue. So, because I was worried because you hear all the horror stories about chemotherapy not working and the first line of treatment not being successful. So I was always hesitant about or skeptical about, what's going to happen. And that's something that I had to get help for, because I would ruminate on the negative instead of the positive. So we did the chemotherapy. Then I did a double mastectomy, and the double mastectomy was by choice. I could have done a lumpectomy where they just would have removed the mass and the lymph nodes, because it did make it to my lymph nodes, because I was actually diagnosed as stage 2. And I was diagnosed stage 2 because they assumed that part of my mass was, it was bigger. But in all actuality, what it turned out to be was calcified tissue, and they were including that in the size of the measurement. But yet and still, I did the double mastectomy. I don't regret it, because it gave me, when you're trying to live, you want every percentage to even 1% to 2%. So I was only given a 6% advantage doing the double mastectomy. But if you think about living, 6% is huge.
Absolutely.
Did that. I did not necessarily have to go through radiation treatment, because they found that they did a study that said that if a person has a pathological complete response to chemotherapy, it would give them 1% chance of succeeding. Radiology would only be beneficial by 1%. Radiation would be. So I didn't have to necessarily do radiation, but sadly, you think about the what ifs, the reoccurrences, or if there's a possibility. So that's in my back pocket. Because what radiation does is it burns your skin so bad, and my skin would have been, wouldn't have been as healthy since I did a reconstruction surgery. So I did reconstruction with expanders and implants. So I'm on my 10th or 11th surgery, and on the November I have my 12th one, and then we're going to wrap this up. So it's about a 2-year journey.
About how much money has this plant treatment cost you? Because I know that number was big. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, it was a lot. So
my body is worth a couple million now. Just my body alone. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire.
I love it. I love it.
Not by choice, but hey,
it's perspective.
One treatment alone it's called Herceptin. It was about $80,000 per treatment. And then the other medications, one was $50,000 per treatment. Another was $20,000, because they give you medication so you can actually still function. Something that was not around when my mother was alive. They give you treatment to build up your white blood cells. That was the most painful medication ever, because you can actually feel your bones doing something. So that was excessive. So each chemotherapy session, thank God for insurance. Each chemotherapy session was probably a total of about $200,000.
Wow.
And then you had
how many rounds?
I did 6.
6 rounds.
And then you had surgery for the double mastectomy. That was in the double digits, in thousands. And then I did the reconstruction. That was in the double digits. And then in the hospital, I wound up staying longer after mastectomy because I actually had a seizure. My my platelet count was so low that they were even worried about me even having the seizure prior to me doing the double mastectomy, because the platelet count was so iffy. And they were saying, because it was an 8-hour surgery. So they do the mastectomy and start the reconstruction process at the same time. So it's an 8-hour surgery. And they were worried that they would have to stop the surgery when it was time to do the reconstruction because my numbers were so low. And I was like, let's try it. I mean, let's just do it. And God stepped in and we were able to finish the surgery. But in the hospital, that's when I got really sick. And even before that, chemotherapy I was blessed up until about the 5th treatment where all of the side effects kicked in. So I was bedridden for 6 weeks. You have no control of your body, your functions. It breaks you. It breaks you mentally and it breaks you physically. I always hear people say, cancer picked the right chick. No, cancer picked the wrong chick. And I salute them for, advocating and being being their own cheerleader. But I'm gonna say cancer picked the right chick because it broke me. I mean, the entire process is, I don't wish it on my worst enemy. I don't.
For those 6 weeks that you were, I guess, down, bedridden, at home. I don't like the use bedridden, but you were at home. What was was there a low moment where you were like, I can't do this? Or were you always like, I'm going to do this, God, I need to, like, what was your thought? Because we always like to think, or most of the stories I hear is, I had a bad day, but I just kept trusting God. And I trust me, I trust and believe in God, but I know that there are some days that you're just like, God, what is happening here? So what was that day for you? What was that?
I would probably say throughout when I was initially diagnosed and honestly, I'm just going to be brutally honest, unfiltered. I was suicidal. Mm-hmm. I was, because it's so much. It's so many bills. It's so many things. Your body's changing. You're losing weight. You're losing your I can remember one day looking and I'm like, what is that blowing across my floor? Because the ceiling fan was on, and it was my hair. It was my hair. So everything that's going on with your body is breaking you. From me, so I can remember like my port they put in my chest. They couldn't even. My body rejects everything. I have a very sensitive body. So actually the cancer I had is environmental. They don't really, it's not genetic. It's not hereditary. It's environmental. So that's how sensitive I am. And I can remember the port, my body recognizing the foreign object and the port being placed in my chest, and they couldn't use it. So they went ahead and gave me chemo one day, and I wound up getting a chemo burn that stretches from here to here. So that lets you know how strong those chemicals are, because it burned through every single layer of skin. You just don't, it's hard to even, you just wonder if you're going to make it out of this process. The other day I went to the hospital, and I asked her, I said, how many appointments have I had? She said 194.
Wow. Yeah. 194?
Yes, ma'am.
I did not know that. Yes, I know that you are a self-contractor. You're an independent contractor. That's your profession in the IT space. And so that's 194 appointments. That's time away from work. And you are the sole provider for yourself, at least to my knowledge.
I am.
And so in that moment where you're feeling suicidal, I believe that all of those things, you were thinking of not only how you were feeling, but all of the other responsibilities that you have along with that. How did you overcome that feeling of being suicidal, or just thinking, just let this go?
My village.
Good.
And you were an integral part of my village and your husband.
Honored to be a part of your village. I'm glad you mentioned that. Are you surprised who showed up and who didn't show up for you in that moment?
Kelley, I never felt so loved in my life. I love that for you. When I talk about my village, they were instrumental in my healing. They were instrumental in my self-care, in my trying to maintain my home, in my mental health. And it was they showed up and they showed out.
I
Now, on
love
the
that.
other hand, you think that your family will be there for you, and that's not always the case. Sometimes more people are more concerned about you asking or needing something from them, so they turn their back on you. And that hurt. That really hurt. So as you can see, I'm because that hurt.
Hey, this is a safe space. Be as emotional as you need to be. I think you agree to do this because you know it's safe with me. I'm not exploiting your experience. I just really think that you're going to bless somebody. And I know that you're speaking truth.
I am.
And sometimes you think family is going to be there and they don't, and I believe sometimes it's not that they don't want to be. In some cases, they don't want to, but in other cases, I think they don't understand how to, or they don't want to accept reality. I'm not sure because I can never not see myself not showing up for a family member. So I don't know what that thought process is. What do you think for those that didn't show up? What do you think? What do you perceive was their reason for not showing up for you in that moment?
So my father and my stepmother did tremendously. They were a bit instrumental in my coming out. I call it coming out of the valley. But I would probably have to say the other members of my family just did not have. I'm gonna blame it on selfishness, right? So, okay. or I'm gonna blame it on. They were so worried about what their house looked like. Material things.
Okay.
Things that don't mean anything to someone that's facing a battle like this. They were worried about trivial things in the grand scheme of things. If it was just weird and it was hurtful. You think that people would show up when they say they are for a doctor's appointment and they never do, or they say that they're going to call, because I spent Thanksgiving by myself and friends invited me over. But you would think that, family is going to be family,
I wish I had known that you spent Thanksgiving by yourself. You would have been with us over in Pleasant Grove because we would have had a good time. But I was honored to show up for you because I just could not imagine you going through this. And you're the second friend of mine that I've supported through this journey. But I just, when you love someone, you show up for them, plain and simple, full stop. And not at a time when it's convenient for yourself. You show up for people. And I believe that is where your blessing comes from. And I believe that's why you were so blessed. You were blessed with so many people who weren't biologically related, who dropped everything to come be by your side. I was happy to be there when you rung the bell. I think I flew in that day before, and I left the hospital and headed straight back to the airport. But I wanted to be there. I wanted to be there for one of the chemo treatments, but Layla was in school at the time. And so it just never could line up or whatever. But I wanted you to tell the people who you were before cancer, because I think it's important when we segue to this part. I remember having a conversation with you and you were like, I'm selling my Peloton. I'm selling my purses. And I said, wait. I did. I said, wait. I said, let's not make that decision right now about selling everything. And you were like, well, these expenses are this. I said, I know. I said, but what I would hate for you to do is after it's all said and done, have to go back and repurchase those things. So let's not do that just yet. And so I know there was a switch. There was a change. So who did you become after going through that process? What did you learn about yourself? Oh, but Yeah. What did you learn about yourself and who did you become after that? And then I have another question lined up.
So what I learned about myself is I'm probably more resilient than I would have ever imagined. You know, I've been called strong, but you just don't know how strong you are until you actually go through something. That was one thing. The next lesson learned was the epiphany I had was, you know, you are more than things. Your life is worth more than things. So the handbags, the shoes, all that stuff is nice. But now when people lead with things in their conversation, or they lead with, I'm double degreed, or I make this, or I make that, it actually, my conversations kind of cut short because I want to have moments that aren't based off of material possessions or who you think you are, because you can have all of these things, you can have all of these degrees, but if you're just not a good person to the core, then I don't really want, my time is valuable. Now my time is my currency. My time is my money now. So I really don't even want to be in an environment that doesn't recognize my worth or doesn't recognize who I am.
Very much so. I agree 100%. I'm very, very picky with my time. I sit at a lot of tables, but I don't lead with those tables. Once I leave that table, whatever we were deciding and dealing with at that table, it stays at that table. I don't lead with that. I'm this, I do this, blah, blah, blah. No. And I'm with you. When people do that, it's such a turnoff for me because you can't identify with who you are. You identify with what you do. And that's such a sad, weak place to be in. And so cancer is very tough. It is like you've clearly outlined how tough that was. It took you to darn near the pits of hell. You were like suicidal and ready to be done with this whole thing. But you have a purpose. God wasn't through with you. And as difficult as cancer was, the rebirth of your character is amazing. And the things that matter to you, I believe that life is more meaningful for you.
It is.
And I think it's fuller because I think what happens is you tend to start weeding out the noise, the people that didn't need to be there. And that's friends, family, coworkers. I mean, whether this organization or whatever is serving me, like you really take stock of what's important for you. And so at that time, were you dating? Were you dating at the time?
I was. So when I was initially diagnosed, I was dating. And on the day I received my official diagnosis, October 31st, 2023, the young man decided that it was just not going to be a rewarding experience for him because he didn't feel like I would be as attractive post-cancer as I was pre-cancer.
Wrong.
I'm finer.
Right. Wrong. Not only are you fine, but you got a couple $1 million body right there.
I got some 20-year-old boobs. You know, I'm doing pretty good. You know,
right.
I always say God has a funny way of doing things because even before I was diagnosed, I was like, hey, I want some new boobs. I need to check on getting that, and I was like being so diligent about it. And I was like, God said, I'm gonna give you some new boobs, all right. I'm gonna give you something else, but I'm gonna give you some boobs.
Right. So when he decided, how did he tell you that this wasn't going to work for him?
So actually, he started comparing my situation to his father's and saying that how bad his father looked when his father got sick.
Oh,
and
wow.
In so many words, he was saying that's what I was going to look like. I was going to be skin and bones. I wasn't going to be healthy, and pretty much said I was going to die.
Wow.
Like his father. Yeah.
How did you respond to that?
You know, I it took me a minute and I processed it. And then the next day I talked to one of my therapists, and because I was trying to see if I was wrong or if he was just sharing his experience. And she said, no, you're not wrong. She was like, when you're going through something that, you know, tumultuous, you want to hear positivity and you want to hear people pour love into you. And that was something that I experienced throughout the entire journey. I had people making comments about, you know, my weight. You know, I lost a lot of weight. You're too. What do you expect? What the hell you expect? I got cancer.
Right. Right.
I'm gonna lose weight. Or people, cracking jokes about me being bald. And then when they find out that I have cancer, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But you shouldn't say those things anyway.
Absolutely.
You look good to be sick.
Are you serious?
Oh my, I have heard everything. You look amazing to be so sick. You look good to be so sick. You carry yourself well to be so sick. Thank you. I mean, what do you say to that? Like, what do you say to that?
Wow. God knows what he's doing, because I did not need to be with you when they were saying that silly stuff. Mm-hmm. That would not have been good. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Yeah. You look so good. You look good to be so sick.
Mm-hmm. You look good to be so sick.
And honestly, you were really cute with your head. I was like, girl, you are serving face. Well, and I told you one thing they can never play with is your face card. It's going to swipe and pass every single time. So, hey.
But I have a funny story about the bald head. So I can remember I was really self-conscious about it. I was very self-conscious about it because it was slick. And I can remember I did a test. So I went to Walmart and I went through the lawn and garden department because I didn't want anyone to stare at me because I was bald. And the complete opposite happened. Women would compliment me, men would compliment me, and they just thought it was the most amazing, bold thing, the boldest thing a woman could do. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is not by design. This is not intentional. But God was sending people. I always say there are always rams in the bush. So I don't know if your audience knows the story of Abraham, when he was getting ready to, kill his son, but there was a ram in the bush. And there's always a ram in the bush to save you or give you an answer when you doubt or question yourself. God sends a ram in the bush. And those were my rams in the bush. You were my ram in the bush. The rest of my village has been the ram in my bush. Everybody that is in my corner, God sends for a reason. And he knows that I need them at that very moment.
Absolutely. And so when you started to, I guess, get on the back end of it and start to consider dating again, would you look for in a partner change? Or do you feel like it stayed the same, massaged it a little bit? What is that for you now? Like, what do you look for in a partner?
I look for compassion. I look for peace. I look for, honestly, I just look, so the word man is very, it's a honor to me to call someone a man. You have men that can act like young men, but a man who is knowledgeable, who wants to know you, understand you, and accept you for where you are in your life, that's huge for me. Dating has an entirely different purpose for me now. Someone that is not caught so stuck up on, and they understand that as we age, we evolve. At some point, we both gonna have elastic in our waistbands. So you got to rebuke you on that. You and Troy gonna have some elastic in your waistbands with some sketches on, right?
Not sketches, not the slide-ons.
with some mules on,
right?
So I want somebody that understands that as we evolve, we're definitely going to change, and they recognize that, and they want to be by me because we're all going to go through the valley. Every single one of us will go through the valley. But you want somebody that's going to hold your hand while you're in the valley. You want someone that's going to hold your hand when you come out of the valley and love you just the same.
No, you're absolutely right. And I remember when you told me the story about the gentleman you were dating at the time, I remember saying to you, Tina, just thank God you found out now. I said, you don't want somebody by your side who can't go through it with you. I said, so just be thankful for that. It might hurt, but be thankful for that. But I also know there's a new Mister in town.
There's a new Mister. He's a great guy. He's a great man. That is one of the things that I actually love about him. I love his ability to see things in me that I don't necessarily see in myself. His intelligence is a huge turn on, if you will. and just his entire, his conversation, it's different. It's not focused on, he's very complimentary of who I am. He appreciates, my intelligence. He comes to the table with more than just his physical appearance. He's a good person, and I'm very excited to have met him. And I am so glad that God saved the best. As I always say, I had one more relationship in me, and I'm glad that God saved the best for last.
That is fantastic. And just so our listeners know, he was going to join us today, but had a competing priority. So I will get to meet him at homecoming, right?
You will. You will see.
Yay! I'm so happy for you, my friend. I am so happy for you. Like, there's so many good things going on for you right now. And I want to talk about, you're a whole author now. I'm scared of you. A whole author. What's going on? Tell me about Texi and what inspired you to write a children's book, and tell us a little bit about it.
Okay. So Texi is a children's book. I just kept thinking about, if I'm going through all these things and people are saying all these hurtful things to me as an adult, I can only imagine what children go through when they are faced with an illness that changes their physical appearance. So I channeled that energy into writing a book named Texi, Perfectly and Wonderfully Made. Texi was the name that my mom was originally going to give me at birth, but she chose Tina, which is fine. But I wanted to pay a little, respect to my mom, Absolutely. Just for the name. And I wanted to remind children that in spite of they are perfectly and wonderfully made, in spite of anything they may face, you are still God's child. You are beautiful. You are amazing. You are smart. And don't let anyone make you doubt who you are. That was paramount for me in crafting and writing that book. Texi is a young lady. She actually gets cancer, and she actually has to find the courage to face her bullies at school. And it's going to be a series. Actually, I've actually started working on, the next book. We're going to be meeting a young lady who's blind. We're going to be meeting a young man who has autism, who's on the spectrum, and possibly, a young person that maybe maybe unable to walk. So I want to keep it, and they're superheroes. So I want people to be able to tap into their inner strength, because that's what my illness did for me. It made me realize that, again, that I was resilient, but I also can adapt. I had a willingness to live, and that was my superpower. How I fought, how I showed up to fight every single day. That was my superpower.
It seems like you found, I won't say found, but tapped into your purpose. It feels like you've tapped into your purpose in a way that is really, and I believe purpose serves others regardless, but you're locked in, and that you're ready to serve in terms of offering truth and offering encouragement, and it's manifesting through your creative side, through your writing, through your storytelling. And I just firmly believe that that's going to bless somebody. And so lastly, before we go, and I wish we had so much more time, but what would you tell a woman who's going through this, who's at the beginning of this journey?
I'm actually going to tell you what my doctor told me. You think you're strong, but she said, you're going to need people. You're going to need help. And that didn't resonate with me, because I'm a very private person. I didn't understand those words. But you need your village. You need people, and you need to let them love on you. I don't care how independent you are or how strong you think you may be. You need your village. You have to rely on others for help, because there are some days when you can't carry yourself, and you will need them. You'll need them to carry you. That's it.
No. And besides homecoming this week, what are you optimistic about? The future. What are you optimistic about for your future?
Living. I want to live. I don't want to exist. I want to live. I'm actually still working on I have an app called My Breasty that I'm still working to put in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Anything I can do, I want to use the gifts that God blessed me with, which are my technical skills, in any way, shape, or form to help others so they can utilize them in AI or anything of that nature in their day-to-day life, how to make their day-to-day life easier and how to be more proficient with just technology as a whole. That's what the gift that God gave me, and the gift of gab, So I want to be able to combine the two to just, enhance someone's life.
Where can our listeners pick up Texi?
Texi can be found on Amazon. You can just search for Texi, Perfectly and Wonderfully Made, and you will see it. It is priced. It's very affordable. I think it's like $12.99 or something like that. I can't necessarily remember the price, but some of the proceeds actually are donated to the Children's Hospital, as well as I'll start working with St. Jude's as well, and some of the proceeds will go to them as well. So it serves a purpose. It's strictly for the children, and I want to make their lives a little easier if I can, in any way, shape, or form.
And then if you send me the link again, I'll make sure that I put it up as well. I'm going to bring my copy with me. Do you have it there in front of you? I was going to show them.
We have a copy here. Texi, Perfectly and Wonderfully Made,
and illustrated by you.
Yes,
my friend is talented.
Did you read the dedication though? It's dedicated to my village.
You know what? I read it when I first got it, so I don't remember it. But I read the whole book soon as I opened the package.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of my illustrations.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
You did a great job. Like, I knew you could do coding and all that stuff. I did not know how bad you really are. So yeah, no, I'm really, really proud of you, Tina. And thank you so much. Thank you for your willingness to speak candidly about your personal journey to beating cancer, breast cancer, for telling more than just the treatment side of it, but how it impacted every area of your life. You've told the story. You've planted, and now God is going to do the watering. This episode was meant for somebody. I don't know who, but I am convinced that, because it weighed on me that I kept putting it off. So I know that this is going to bless somebody. So I will see you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in. I cannot thank Tina enough for her candor with this. And I know October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I just want to say to all the cancer survivors, those who are going through this fight right now, that we are with you, that your resilience and the strength that it takes for you to get through this is inspiring. And it is our prayer that you find the village that will support you through it, and that you come out on the other side healthy, whole, and more aware of your purpose as well. Thank you so much for tuning in.